Hello, my name is John Teply, and today I am interviewing Patricia Moss, who does amazing work. When her painting from last year for seventh generation, it had this really nice mix of the whole landscape off to the horizon, as well as that which was right at your feet. And there was something about it when I viewed it where it was like all of this was important. And, she wanted to kind of like make sure that we had a sense of the whole landscape, what went the horizon to that, what was at our feet. And it was an amazing painting. And good to see you, Patricia. How are you doing?
Thank you. I am wonderful. Today I am at the beach trying to get more inspiration for more paintings. Actually back at the location of one of the paintings that I submitted last year that was at the exhibition. So
Oh, I am so jealous because I can see the water behind you. It's oh man, here I am in Portland in my apartment. So tell me, when you started painting, you're looking at the blank canvas. What are some of your first thoughts?
well, when I go to a canvas, I already have my composition in mind. I have everything in place except for how it's going to actually, be laid out and spaced out on the canvas before I even sit down at that canvas. I've done sketches beforehand. I've thought about the color palette beforehand and really planned out some of my compositional elements before I even sit down. So I don't sit and stare at a blank canvas trying to imagine what it's going to look like because I've already got that picture in my mind.
So you say some of your compositional elements, so that kind of sounds like you have the basic elements, but you leave it open for something else to happen, for opportunities.
Yeah, you get it exactly. That's totally it. Each painting that I have, I've got that sketch of some of those compositional elements, but then as I'm doing a painting, I let the brush strokes and the color palette and everything just kind of take me into it and become what it's going to become. And then I sit back and reassess it as I go, and figure out, is it working? Is it not? Step away from it at times to try and determine whether it's veering away from the composition or the point of focus that I want it to have. A lot of times, like you were mentioning, my paintings, it's really important to me that people see both that full picture and a lot of the detail that's in the foreground. A lot of times we concentrate either too much on just what's at our feet or too much at what's on the horizon, and we don't see the whole entire picture. So it is really important to me that when I'm doing a painting that I have people see the whole thing and that they get the detail as well as that distance.
Yeah, I think it's very effective, because there's something surprising about that, because often I think artists they choose one or the other, and like still life, which essentially is what you did for one part of your painting, but then you had more of a traditional landscape for the other part of the painting, and it was very nice. So what that brings in play is, so you also have both the mood of the location, but then the details themselves are very important to you.
They are. I really like concentrating on the texture that I can provide with focusing on some of those details in the foreground when I'm doing a painting. So that becomes really, really important. You had put in some of the things that we had talked about before, how important is brush strokes to you. Brush strokes and the mediums that I use to help to enhance that texture and really define the details in the foreground, especially. So it really enhances, I think, what I try and do with each of my paintings.
So how do you choose your colors?
I generally stick to, I really don't go outside of about 5 or 6 different paint colors, and then I just create colors from that. So I've really done a lot of work over the last few years studying colors and mixing of colors and how to desaturate and create colors from a basic color palette. So those colors have really kind of become a definition of what I've done. So even if I'm doing a summer landscape or a winter landscape, I'm still using those same basic colors and then just changing the tone of them in order to create a different mood.
Yeah. So what are the colors that you use?
Indian red is one of the primary colors. Oh my gosh, now, now you called me on it. I'm not going to remember them all. Indian red and phthalo blue and, oh gosh, burnt sienna, burnt umber.
And
Oh
black?
my gosh, there's one more. Nope, no black. I do not use black at all.
Oh, you
Yep,
don't?
so
Oh.
I don't use any black. That is one thing that I used to do earlier in my painting career, is used a lot of black. And what I learned from it is I didn't get the depth. You don't get the same mood and you don't get the same depth when you use black. If you use a tiny bit, that's great. But one of the things that an earlier mentor that I had told me was that there's so much color within the shadows that we see, that if you're just using black or using primarily black for those shadows, that you're not going to see the depth in the shadows. So learning to mix the phthalo blue with the burnt sienna, or the phthalo blue with the Indian red, to get different tones and use those together to create the blacks, and how you lay them next to each other creates the different tones and the different shadows. So you don't need to use black.
Nice. You know, I do these group painting events, you know, and I find it interesting that you use phthalo blue, because that's actually one of the colors that I hide from people.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people put like a little bit of a phthalo blue down or in something, and it looks amazing. And then the idea goes, well, if a little bit looks good, let's use a whole bunch. And then, you know.
That is definitely a struggle, because it's one of my favorite colors, but it can overshadow the rest of the colors in the painting. And another color that I use is cerulean blue.
Oh, cerulean blue, okay.
So in my skies, phthalo blue, cerulean blue. Oh, oh my gosh, there's a gray. It's a standard gray.
Is it Payne's gray?
Yes, Payne's gray. I think it's Payne's gray.
So now the cerulean blue is actually one that you could mix if you choose to, right? Or do you like?
Oh yeah, I mix all of them.
Oh, you mix all of them, okay.
Yeah, so I desaturate the colors in my background by mixing the complementary colors. So I don't use any green either. A lot of my paintings have some green for the trees, and
Sure.
less so in the seascapes, of course, but for the trees and in my forest landscapes and things like that. But I still don't use any green. If anything, I will mix a yellow with a little bit of a black in order to get a green, or I'll mix burnt sienna with cerulean blue or with phthalo blue to get a different tone of green. That way it looks more natural, and it has more of a Northwest feel to the colors.
Now, do you ever use like pure yellow?
Very rarely. Very rarely. Sometimes autumn landscapes, I use some pure yellow, sorry, I get tongue tied. But, and in some of the seascapes that I have, like one I just finished, or I'm almost finished with, for a summer exhibition, has a little bit of yellow in the sunset, but not a lot of it.
Hmm. Tell me about your brushes.
Okay, so about a year ago, I was approached by a company called Addies Art Pro, and they asked me to try out their brushes, and I ended up doing promos for them for about, I think it was 3 months. I use their brushes exclusively when I teach classes because they're a really good price point for beginning artists, but they're pretty dang good quality. And so for almost the entire painting, for about a year, I've been using their brushes, and I really enjoy how durable they are and how well they do with both blending and details.
So tell me about like things like like the type of brush strokes that you use. Like what are you looking for in the surface of your painting from your brush strokes?
So I use a technique called glazing in a lot of my paintings, and I use a lot of paint mediums with it. So the brush strokes vary quite a bit from layer to layer. In the background of my paintings, I'm usually using a large brush and looser, bigger brush strokes to kind of block in the colors, and it's very, very loose. And then as I move to the foreground, I move to smaller brushes or even to a palette knife. And the brush strokes become more short and more defined, and I do less blending when I get to the foreground.
Well, how do you approach, like the intangible things of a landscape? Like emotions, a transcendent experience. Does that play a part in your work?
Yeah, it's a huge part of my work. When I approach a subject or a composition, I'm looking for something that has an emotional connection to me or a spiritual connection to me. I feel very connected to the land of the Pacific Northwest, and just what emotions it draws out in me and what spiritual feelings it draws out in me. And so when I'm looking at a landscape and trying to figure out how to capture that, I'm really looking for light, and the blending of like the clouds and different things like that. So the softer brush strokes in that sense, or the more dramatic areas where the light's hitting things, and that would be a harder line. Whereas those background kind of more softer areas would be a softer line.
Could you talk a little bit about your spiritual experience? Just what it is that it is, if you're comfortable with that.
I'm not sure what you're asking, but if I'm understanding right, you're asking like, what is the spiritual experience that I have as far as my paintings and how that affects me? Is that what you're asking?
I think so.
Okay. Well, it's kind of hard to describe. It's something that I do better through my painting than I do verbally. So do better through poetry than I do through my painting.
And that's actually absolutely fair.
I was raised
because often how paintings begin or how painters begin is because they have these experiences and it's somehow trying to connect with it, understand it, something, and
yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, I was raised in a very spiritual family. and a family that was very connected to the land. My grandfather was a farmer, and I have Native American relatives, and so there's a very strong connection with both the land and with spirituality. And I think that growing up, camping and being outdoors with my family, that was just a place where I felt that connection, where I feel like I'm closest to God. So
cool.
I guess that's all I can explain.
Could you tell me about the painting that you did last year? It had an interesting title. I'm trying to remember what it was. Do you remember the title?
There was two of them. I think one of them, the one at Ruby Beach, which was here at this location where I'm sitting, that one was called, I believe, Reality Check. And so I'm not sure if that was the one you were talking about.
Well, that's a good one to talk about. It seems like you're you're very thoughtful about your titles.
I am,
like you just don't go painting of the beach. It's something else.
No, for me, I guess the Reality Check title leads back to that kind of spiritual connection of when I'm out in nature, when I'm at a place where I've found a place to paint, it grounds me. It helps me see things in a different perspective. And what's really real is what's in front of us and what we're in the moment experiencing. So sometimes we get distracted by all the chaos in life and by things like the pandemic or like political things that are happening. And if they're not directly affecting us in that moment, then it's healthier for us to sit and have a reality check with ourselves, to be in the moment, experience the moment, and really live in the moment that we're in. Because otherwise we're missing out on life.
That was really well said. Thank you. Could you tell me a bit about the location that you're at right now and your connection to it?
So Ruby Beach was somewhat new to me. When your gallery had contacted me last year and asked me to do a couple of paintings for the 7th generation, I wasn't really sure where I wanted to paint. I grew up both camping in Eastern Washington and North Idaho, and later on in my life, tromping around the beaches of Southern Washington, and as well as all along the Oregon coast where my mom lives. And a friend of mine has a place in Ocean Shores, and so I was connecting with her and saying, where's a really beautiful beach in Washington that's near Ocean Shores where I could go and just check it out. And so I spent like an entire day up here just playing around the beach with my dog and taking, probably 1,000 pictures to try and get a good look at the landscape, and just tromped all up and down this area of the Washington coast. And then I did some research later on about the history of it. It was part of the Quinault Indian Reservation, and there's a large Native American tie to a lot of this region. So we're stewards of this land, and this is a beautiful area that we're all gifted to be able to visit and experience.
So now part of the project is this idea about our responsibility to generations, and and standing in solidarity with their needs as we use the planet as we've been given it to take care of, which is something that we don't get to keep. We're going to give it to future generations, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Did you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, learning about what the Seventh Generation Project was about was the big thing that really drew me to being part of it. I think that is something that was really instilled in me early in my childhood, was learning that the area where we live is something that we need to preserve. It's something that we need to protect for future generations, and we do that by not only, making sure that we don't leave trash everywhere, not only by making sure that we're not doing things that erode the landscape, but also and pollute the landscape, but also by learning about the history of it and making sure that we're passing along the history to our future generations as well.
Nice. Okay, well, this has been a really lovely interview. You can see her work at this coming summer in July at the Lincoln City Cultural Center, and
Absolutely.
and you're doing 2 more paintings, is that right? For the
I am hoping to, yes.
she's hoping to do 2 more paintings, and it's always very exciting to receive her work. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Yeah, thank you, John.
So I've been talking with Patricia Moss, and she's off to do some painting. Bye for now.
Bye.